This is GARIS Masculist MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. This is flyer number 1, ta-da, entitled The ABCs of MGTOW and Masculism. Description: a 22-slide PowerPoint presentation on the main ideas of MGTOW and masculism. Now the flyer itself, ad-libbing now. I'm just reading out the slides of this flyer, this PowerPoint presentation. The ABCs of Masculism and MGTOW. There are various 3 footnotes. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. This flyer is written by Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Masculism is Mens Lib. MGTOW is men going their own way, that is, not marrying, not having kids. And Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS, footnote, is coiner of the term masculist in the early 1970s and principal theorist of the European men's movement in the 1980s. Next slide. Traditional gender roles, a bit of history. In the pre-industrial age, husband and wife both worked hard on the farm. Both sexes were economically active. Then the steam engine came and the factory system. People had to be economically mobile to follow their jobs. This led to the breakup of the multi-generational family farm and the birth of the nuclear family, mom, dad and the kids. Then came sewage systems and better health care. Kids survived, often a dozen per family. Dad worked, made the money. Mom looked after the kids at home. The contraceptive pill revolution. One of the greatest revolutions to hit humanity occurred in the 1960s, the invention of the contraceptive pill. Women could control reliably the number of kids they wanted. They wanted 1 or 2. This would occupy them for a few years when the kids were small. What were women to do for the remaining half-century of their lives? Female careers. Women entered the workforce in droves and became like men. Many women became financially independent persons. FIPS, F-I-P-S. Second wave feminism. When women started entering the workforce, they encountered the conservatism of traditional men who felt disturbed by career women. This led to a lot of resentment on the part of women, so a new social movement was invented. Feminism, that is, women's lib. The first wave feminists, early in the 1900s, pushed for the vote. Second wave feminists pushed for equal pay for equal work, for an abortion right, for equal opportunities for entry into the professions, etc. Feminists lobbied the gender politicians and achieved nearly all their social and legal goals. Laws were changed to favour women more, but things went overboard. Third wave feminism, the rise of gynocentrism. Over the past half-century, feminism has spread and spread, from the sage, that is intellectual, beginnings to mainstream. Political feminists lobbied the politicians hard to give them favourable handling in the divorce courts. They were very successful, too successful, because the divorce courts have now become a slaughterhouse for men in Western countries. The media has been taken over by feminists who now portray men as bumbling fools, as incompetent, inferior beings. In short, feminism has become gynocentric and needs to be corrected, which is where masculism and MGTOW come in. The financial massacring of divorcing fathers. In many Western countries, fathers who divorce are financially massacred. They will lose custody of their kids with 90% probability. They will lose their house to the ex-wife so she can raise her kids in it. He'll be forced by the divorce court to pay child support for the kids, whom he will barely see, maybe twice a month on weekends. If his wife is career incompetent, that is a fluffy, see a later slide, He will be forced to pay alimony to his parasitic ex-wife so that she continues to parasite on him both before and after the divorce. Half of marriages end in divorce in many countries. 70% of divorces are started by women. The massive male backlash, the rise of masculism and MGTOW. MGTOWs are mostly young men, under 35, who reason that marriage is toxic, so don't marry, don't have kids. MGTOWs spend their money on themselves and avoid relationships with career incompetent females, that is, fluffies. MGTOWs refuse to marry and have kids. This is not a fringe group. 70% of young men under 35 in the US today refuse to marry and have kids, with 3 exclamation marks, in red. If sustained, this will wipe out the US population within a century. This MGTOW/masculist rebellion against traditional marriage is the most important phenomenon of our times. Main terms and ideas of the masculists. Before launching into the main ideas of the masculists and the MGTOWs, some masculist and MGTOW terms need to be defined. Masculist terms. Masculist equals male equivalent of the word feminist, that is, a men's libber who fights for men-fair gender legislation and men's well-being. Fluffy equals traditional woman who expects to be able to parasite off the money of a man. Fluffy is based on the word fluff, that is, not light, light, that is, light, not serious, not adult, not responsible, not career competent, not FIP, see next term. FIP equals financially independent person, the type of woman that masculists demand women become, or they will not get a man. Robot male, or manslave, equals traditional man who expects to be parasited upon by a fluffy wife, for example, as with the older male generation in Korea or Japan. Fluffy feminist equals feminist who has had her feminist consciousness raised but not her masculist consciousness because she has never heard of the masculists. So, by default, fluffy feminists have traditional expectations of men. That is, they see men as checkbooks to be exploited financially by women. Main masculist ideas. A. Fluffies must work. Now that women can work, they must work. Anything else is parasitism by women on men's labour. Fluffies are seen by masculists as the enemy, including fluffy feminists. Fluffies are labelled by masculists as parasitic, immoral, manslaving vermin, to be wiped out, not by killing them, but by ignoring them to extinction. Manslavery is slavery. Slavery is a war issue. The masculists are at war against the fluffies. The primary political goal of the masculists is to wipe out fluffydom. Masculists threaten fluffies with slogans such as, "Be FIP or be manless." Fluffies can rot on the shelf. If you want to have a man, have a career. Fluffies are parasitic, immoral, manslaving vermin. Masculists say to male robots, "Rather a FIP than a fluffy. A fluffy will parasite on you before the divorce and after." B. The masculists fight against legal discrimination against men. 1. No para, paternity rejection right. The most blatant example of sexual discrimination against men is the lack of the male equivalent of women's MARA, maternity rejection right, commonly known as the abortion right. Men have no para, paternity rejection right, which would absolve him from any financial responsibility for a child unwanted by him. If the woman goes ahead with the pregnancy, it is financially entirely her responsibility. There are many other examples of legal discrimination against men. 2. Men fearing the divorce laws. The massive injustice committed in today's divorce courts screams out for reform. Masculists demand joint custody of the children by default. The house remains in the possession of the owner or owners before the divorce. The divorcing couple is expected to buy a cheap one-person apartment near the house that the divorcing couple shares alternately, week by week. When one ex-spouse is in the apartment, the other is in the house raising the kids. The following week, they swap places. With nearly all women as FIPs, this arrangement is practical. Hence the pressure from the masculus that all women be FIPs. C. Restoring men's faith in themselves. Feminists have taken over the broadcast media and are brainwashing boys that boys belong to the inferior sex. Primary and secondary schools are now dominated by female teachers who preach feminist ideas to boys so that as men they see themselves as inferior to women. Masculists teach society that men are the superior sex based on scientific evidence. Men have a 3 to 4 IQ point superior average IQ than women, says Professor Rushton, R-U-S-H-T-O-N. Google him. Men have a 10% higher IQ variance than women. That is, their IQ scores are more spread out over the whole population than women's. So the morons and the genii are males. Men win 99% of the science Nobel Prizes and dominate the Who's Who books. MGTOW terms and ideas. MGTOW terms. Red pill equals an analogy taken from the movie The Matrix. Taking the red pill means facing up to the bitter reality in the movie that humans are batteries to serve the intellectually superior machines. In real life, taking the MGTOW red pill means accepting the idea that, quote, women do not love men. They love what men can provide for them materially and financially, end quote. If a man loses this role, she will coldly and disloyally dump him in favour of a better male provider. MGTOWs see this makes Darwinian sense. Blue pill equals, again, from the Matrix. Taking the blue pill in the movie means staying in the Matrix, that is, having signals sent directly to your human brain by the intelligent machines that make you think you are living in the 20th century, that is, living a delusion. For MGTOWs, a blue pillar is a male who is deluded, believing that women love him, whereas in reality they are using him to help them raise their, that is the woman's, kids. MGTOWs see blue pillars as fools. Hypergamy equals tendency of women to trade up to a better male provider if she has a realistic opportunity. If a husband loses his job or is injured and can no longer play the provider manslave role, the wife will coldly dump him for a better, that is more exploitable, man. Entitlement equals young women in their 20s are at the peak of their sexual attractiveness and are showered with attention from men who seek access to their vaginas. This heavy attention goes to young women's heads to the point they expect it and behave accordingly, that is, as princesses, which annoys MGTOWs greatly. Main MGTOW ideas. The essential MGTOW idea is made explicit in the very label of the MGTOW movement. MGTOWs reject marriage and reject having kids because they feel society has become gynocentric and mistreats men badly. So they rebel. They fight back by simply walking away from the marriage market and from having children. MGTOWs know that they are crashing the birth rate and argue that the gender politicians will sooner or later have to make men fair gender laws or the population will die out. MGTOWs and masculists refuse to be slaves to women. MGTOWs will often sex women, but that's all. They won't marry them, and they won't have kids with them, because, quote, you would have to be a fool to marry. Quote, it's like playing Russian roulette with only 2 chambers in the barrel. In a marriage, you have a 50-50 chance of being financially massacred, so why play? Why marry? MGTOWs see women as inherently, that is genetically, parasitic on men, and rebel against the traditional male role of being a provider, man-slave for women. MGTOWs know that if there are millions, billions of MGTOWs, then this will change society. MGTOWs go through the red pill rage. Once they become conscious that women do not love them. Society has lied to them about female love, like the Santa Claus or Tooth Fairy myth. MGTOWs feel that once a man has gone his own way, he is calmer and far more productive because he is not distracted by female emotionality and irrationality. MGTOWs in history have done great things, for example, Newton, Tesla, etc. MGTOWs feel that being politically active is a waste of effort since the gender politicians are so deeply corrupted and in the pockets of the feminists. More on this soon. Main differences between the MGTOWs and the masculists. In a word, politics. The masculists strongly advocate political action to fight for Mens Lib. MGTOWs are much more passive politically, but not entirely so. Masculists push for the following types of political action. Masculist actions. 1. Lobby the gender politicians. Masculists go to the gender politicians and threaten them with a two-prong attack. One is to threaten them with a male block vote against them unless they make the gender laws men fair, for example in the divorce courts for the para, etc. The other is to shame them in the media as genocidal criminals who are wiping out the population because of their divorce law injustices. 2. Set up MGTOW/masculist groups at universities, high schools. The ideas of the masculists and MGTOWs need to be spread. The universities and high schools are a good place to do this, so Mens Lib groups need to be set up everywhere so that the masses learn about them. 3. Get on the broadcast media. The masculists particularly, since the MGTOWs are wary of the feminist controlled media, need to get on the broadcast media to spread MGTOW/masculist ideas to the masses, to the millions, the billions. Once billions of people are familiar with masculist/MGTOW ideas, then society can change and new men-fairer laws will be legislated. 4. Write books, set up men's studies courses, make videos, etc. Both the masculists and the MGTOWs are busy making lots of YouTube videos to spread their ideas. Soon, a flood of books will appear and men's studies courses will be set up with textbooks on men's gender issues, etc. MGTOW actions. 1. YouTube videos. The main activity of the MGTOWs thus far has been to make YouTube videos. The MGTOW movement is growing exponentially and is probably over the million mark in the US in 2015. So I wrote this 2 years ago. The MGTOWs expect that it's only a question of time before society and the politicians wake up to the idea that men are refusing to have babies and be man-slaves to women. This will inevitably cause the social change that MGTOWs want, that is, to create a society that is men-fair and respects men for what they are, unlike our current genocentric culture that belittles men at every turn. 2. Not much else. Masculists are critical of MGTOWs. MGTOWs are too politically passive. MGTOWs do not try to actively change the gender status quo. How will the rise of MGTOW/masculism affect women? Badly. Fluffies will be wiped out. Now in red. Even today, only a third of young women will get a robot male to marry them and give them children. Back to black. Fluffies will be left to rot on the shelf to extinction. Fluffies will be shunned and shamed to force them to become FIPS. More than half of women at universities study career incompetent majors, which will turn them into fluffies in their 30s when their biological clocks are ticking hard. They know they cannot earn good career competent money, so they'll look around for some robot male to parasite on, who can pay for the middle class house she wants to raise her kids in. But, thanks to masculism and MGTOW, the supply of robot males is drying up. So fluffies will be manless, loveless, sexless, childless, and poor. Fit women will be more likely to get a man, but not assured of one. A fit woman can enter into a lifestyle labelled 2A to F. by the masculist. 2A, 2F equals 2 apartments, 2 FIPs. That is, a fit man has a relationship with a fit woman, each with their own apartment. If the fit woman starts showing her true female nature and starts nagging the man, trying to mould him the way she wants, then he can just walk away, cost-free, because both are FIPs. The 2A, 2F lifestyle forces women to be nice to men, or they don't have one, and vice versa, of course. By 2A, 2F-ing, twee-treffing, a man can spend very little on himself, save and invest a lot so that he can retire early. He can then afford to stop work and become an arker after retirement careerer, doing what he loves doing for more than a third of his life, even a half. A radical change compared to the usual male wage slave who is manslaved by a fluffy wife. And then a picture of me with the new Hong Kong as background. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name De Garis Masculist MGTOW Flyers. And that is the last, in fact the first flyer of 200, so I have reached a milestone. Ciao.